All right, we are here. It's been a little while. I took a little bit of a break. I wasn't feeling the best, but I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our matchup today. It is from the OlimoLeague Holiday Invitational number 8 is what this is from. And I'm going to, there's some backstory that I'll do just to put this match into context, to put this, the few games that we're going to see and all that into context for what this means. So, the Holiday Invitational that OlimoLeague holds invites a bunch of the top players from Europe and Korea to face off in a best of 11, essentially all-kill format. And that means that 2 players will play each other. The loser is out, and then the winner continues to play against the next player that is fielded. And each team has 2 revives to use, since there are 4 players per team. For Team Korea, we had Maru, Trap, Rogue, and Dark. And for Team Europe, we had Clem, Big Gabe, Rainer, and MaxPax. Now, Maru kind of went on a tear at the start. Did get the 3-0 to start it off for Team Korea over MaxPax, Rainer, and Big Gabe. Clem came out, got the win. Very, very kind of a build order win game. Maru tried to be a bit cheesy. It didn't work out, but that means that Clem got a win, and now is going to be facing off against Trap. So I kind of excused the, sorry, as I was just kind of on that pro for the entire first minute as I was explaining that. But what this means is that now Clem is kind of the last hope here for Europe. Of course, you do still have 2 revives that can be used, but Clem needs to try and bring this back. Now, I didn't do introductions just because, of course, we were... because it would be explained, but as you see in the bottom left-hand corner, you do have Clem. The bottom right, you do have Trap. And we're going to be going into a PvT. Now, Clem, as of recently, and I'm going to talk about him first, but I think Trap is a bit more of kind of an easier player to kind of talk about and explain. But Clem definitely has had his ups and downs recently, form-wise especially, in a lot of matchups, especially TVT, TVZ, where usually we expect Clem to at least be decent. Sometimes he'll play really, really well, but then he'll play a player and like Dark, and you'll see a lot of glaring mistakes in his play, and then he'll fix it, but not really. And it's kind of been that way for a month or so, I'd say, especially in TVZ. He's had some ups and downs when playing against especially Korean players. And so this is definitely a good chance, with Last Chance coming up, with Katowice after that, to kind of see, hey, what form is Clem in? Because these games, these players are playing all out. They aren't going to be holding really anything back, so it's going to be exciting to see how they do. Now, as for Trap, of course, still I think obviously the best Terran the best Protoss in the world. Hasn't been having like many amazing results in like the past month or so, but you still can just ignore how good of a season and of a year Trap has had with his premier major tournament wins. So still is going to be a daunting opponent here for Trap. Of course, it's a best of 1, so you eliminate Trap, and then you're not going to have to play him again, at least until you beat the 2 other players as Clem, if you manage to get through them. And that's kind of the scary part about this invitational for Team Europe, is just the roster that is fielded for Korea. It is all pretty much the best. It's the top 4 players in Korea. It's pretty much what it is. Maru, Rogue, Dark, and Trap. That's the top 4 right there, I think. Almost undisputedly. And of course, for Team Europe, you are probably missing Cyril, but I would say that, you are getting good representation from their top talent. Clem, Rainer, I would say, yeah, top 3. Alongside Cyril, and then of course MaxPax and Big Gabe would probably be right down there in the top 5. So it's gonna be exciting. Now, the opening for this game hasn't been anything crazy, so I haven't really been talking about it, but we are having a 4 Widowmine drop come out from Clem. This is his preferred version of this build. Usually you'll see players go for 3. Ooh, oh my, Trap! Almost doesn't pull his workers away properly or split them, but man, just 6 worker kills. It's a bit more than you'd like to take, the 7th having to be given over there to the Cloaked Widowmine. But as I was going to say, the 4 Widowmine drop is something that Clem really likes to do, because what he'll end up doing is he will actually swap over his reactor onto his factory. And he'll go for those 4 Widowmines and then start his tank and Cyclone production. It's just a bit more potent of a timing than the 3, or a bit more potent for damage-wise than the 3 Widowmine drop, which you'll usually see hit right around 5 minutes. So it's a cool little variation that he does. And as we're talking about the builds, so obviously, Trap not taking a bit of damage, but usually 6 workers, it's not going to be game-ending. It all depends on how the Terran is going to macro out of it and how the Protoss really chooses to respond. And we are seeing here Trap is just going for 3-gate blink. So it's light pressure, it's meant to get information to try and keep tabs on where the Terran is when they're moving out, and then also pick away at units as they are doing that. It's kind of more of a distraction than anything. And so Trap is just poking around. We saw there, dived on in, lost a Stalker, but got a few Marine kills. Overall, nothing spectacular. Is going to keep trying to move around, and maybe blink up into the main here to get a few worker kills, but with the tanks already out for Clem, that's going to be a hard ask. Now, the third Nexus will be finishing up for Trap, so it shouldn't be altogether that far behind. Of course, it still hurts, you know, being about even workers with the Terran. You don't really want to be there as the Protoss. Usually you'd like to be, you know, 4, 5 to 8 workers ahead. And that's where you'll be a little bit more comfortable, is when you're just working on a better economy. Of course, the third Nexus being up means that Trap can finally start to push that forward. But he took, you know, losing those 6 workers definitely has put him behind just a little bit. Now we have 6 gateways on the way, plus 1 ground weapons and charge coming out for Trap. And the 6 gateways does feel like a bit much because there is no worker production. And ladies and gentlemen, is this an all-in? This might be an all-in, yeah. 6 gateways, charge plus 1. Warp Prism, worker production has been cut. I have to imagine that this is going to be an all-in here for Trap, or at least very aggressive 3-base pressure. You know, you might be able to recover out of it if you don't kill your opponent, but the goal is to run over that 3rd base, to stop it from getting out, and to try and get into a position where you can then snowball into a very, very easy victory. I don't know if Clem's going to be ready for this. I mean, Clem has 2 tanks, has Marines and Marauders with Stim, but not a heavy medevac count. Doesn't have really Widow Mines to deal with what's going to be a large amount of Zealots that are able to be warped in for Trap, as these Blink Stalkers going forward a little bit aggressively are going to be able to start to trade against the Bio. Now going to move up to try and pick off these Marines that are a bit out of position. Zealots being dropped on down. I don't think this is the right play here for Trap. I mean, he's pushing in, obviously. He's going to be able to get damage, but you're pushing in before your Warpins come through. Now the Stalkers have a great position on the high ground, and Zealots actually come through for a 360 surround. They cleaned up the tanks coming from the top side as the workers are being used to tank. Clem just recognizing that, hey, the worker count really isn't that important here. You just need to hold on. The Biostim's back. There's our pull 13, 14. And more go down. Clem is trying to micro this out. More Widow Mines finally in production as that add-on has been swapped over. And 1-1 is about to finish for Clem. Trap, still no more worker production. He has been sitting at 52 workers for the past minute, and he's going to stay there. Finally, we see 3 more probes added on, though. Trap, I think, figuring that, hey, he got the lift off, he got the worker kills, and that's good enough. And honestly, he's pretty correct in his assessment right now. He's gotten a lot of damage done. It hasn't been game-ending, but it's a lot of damage as the Bio trying to fight underneath this command center. A lot of the Zealots have been cleaned up, but you still have more Warpins coming through. Trap, surprisingly though, is running out of money for these Warpins. You see the Zealots coming through in segmented chunks. It's not the best fighting, or for fighting, just because you're having to deal with the fact that, well, not all of your Zealots are there at once, and now this Bioforce is just a little bit stronger, going to be able to focus down the Immortal. And now we should start to see these Marauders be able to fight just a little bit better. Blinkbacks are used, but the Bio can stim and chase it down. Good pickups from the Warp Prism. Trap supply drops, and Clem holds on. Beautiful stutter step micro. Great kind of assessment of where he could push and when he needed to pull back. And just stop that. I mean, Trap lost a lot. As I said, that's a push that you need to do significant damage with, and I would say Trap got close to it. Oh, losing the Warp Prism as well. You know, he did a good job, but when you lose everything on the backside of it, for the most part, that's when it starts to get a little bit scary, and now we're going to see a Doom drop into the main. Clem recognizes that Trap isn't going to have a lot. Trap's rebuilding right now, so he can try and go for something a little bit cheeky. Does have to pick on up. Trap had his units in position. And now Clem is just trying to attack. He's just trying to press. He is being on the offensive. As the third base has been established for the Terran that has already started mining. I think for Clem, it's a bit risky to push here. You need to try and not lose too much as the Stalkers blink forward, trying to pick off Medivacs. Only get the one. Bio is going to have to back on up. +2 ground weapons on the way for Trap as Clem is amassing another massive army to try and push forward. More Widow Mines, more Marines and Marauders, and Ghosts, now being added on, not Goats. Although, honestly, there should be a Terran unit called the Goat, as these Archons getting caught out is actually pretty massive. That's a lot of supply in those Archons. It's a lot of fighting power in the army for Trap, who's now kind of struggling to actually find himself a lead. You know, Clem survived the pseudo all-in. You know, sure, I mean, Trap had 3 bases behind it, but Trap wasn't producing workers. Trap really didn't produce workers until the very end, and then he threw away all his units. You know, he tried to push it even further, even though he had already started to transition out. And that was really, I think, the big mistake for Trap, who's now, I mean, falling down 30 supply. And Clem, the entire lead in the army count. So we don't mind, just going to be annoying. Ghost will be sacrificed. As Trap, I don't think this is how you want to push. I mean, Trap is going into the mouth of the line, is trying to blink forward, but the whole army is going to come through on the retreat. That Storm, I mean, it hits a lot of units, but I don't know if it matters. There's still a lot of bio here at the back as Trap is managing to clean up the natural base, and maybe this was just the move that he needed to try and find some damage. He cleaned up a lot of the army, but there we go. EMPs go down. It's just Stalkers and the Immortal fighting against bio, and that's never a good sight. As the Stalkers blink on in, they're trying to just find extra damage to delay, to, you know, distract the Terran, but Trap's only at 54 workers. He's not mining off the gold base. And Trap once again is down 20 supply. It's only 2 Stalkers survive from that army, and again, Trap overextends. Clem is going to push down once again towards that position between the natural and the third. There's not a lot of army here for Clem, or for Trap. 45 army supply, a Storm used on pretty much nothing, just to keep the High Templars alive and stop Clem from diving on top of them. This is a dangerous position, but you do have a Zealot run by coming on into the third base of Clem. Doesn't have enough units to be rallied out, but I mean, it might not matter. The counterattack just might not matter. I think Clem has enough just to hemorrhage this position. There's no more army left for Trap. Sure, we're going to see a lot of SCVs go down. Sure, we're going to see a lot of damage from this attack, but a beautiful hold position on the SCVs. And with a single Ghost being surrounded, finally we're going to see a few more go down, but Trap's just losing so much. He's going to lose workers. He's going to lose production. And it's 74 army supply to 25. Trap tried to get aggressive, and it just backfired in his face. Clem, I think, can even clean up the reinforcements that are being warped in. As, I mean, the +2 bio is working with an upgrade advantage, and now has actually taken a worker lead for the first time in this game with gold-based economy. Trap is going to fight for it, but it just does not matter. Clem beats Maru, now takes a map off Trap. Both of those players out until a revive is used. That means there's just the Zergs left. And honestly, for Clem, that might be the best news that you can get, is that you only have to play the Zergs. Sure, they're the best Zergs in Korea, but it is Clem's best matchup. As the Ghosts are fighting, Orb has come through. As the final unit dies, GG is called. Clem and give Team Europe a chance here in this Invitational. As I'm going to try and get the score right on the first attempt. Oh no, it's 3-2. There we go. I got it. We're professional. In the bottom left-hand corner of Hardwire, took out Maru, took out Trap, is looking to continue this win streak for Team Europe in the OlimoLeague Holiday Invitational number 8. It is Team Liquid's Clem. And in the top right. Did I say bottom right or did I say bottom left? I can't remember. You know, man. Dyslexia. It hits you hard sometimes. But it is the most Chad player, Zerg player perhaps ever. From Dragon Phoenix Gaming, it's Dark. And we've made it here to a chance for Team Europe to equalize. So obviously, you know, after Maru getting those 3 wins, Clem looking to do the same. Looking to now take out, you know, I mean, if he wins this, 3 of the top 5 players in Korea. Of course, you know, it's only best of ones, but even then, you know, it would be impressive, but it's going to be hard because Dark has actually, I think, always kind of had a bit of a style that kind of counters Clem. Especially recently, I think a lot of Clem's issues in TVZ with his greediness have been kind of exploited by Dark. Because Dark is a player who's very aggressive. Dark is a player who will sit at 50 workers on 4 base and, you know, max out with 60 with 60 drones on Roach Ravager. You know, Dark is aggressive. Dark likes to play with high army counts and to overwhelm you and to try and find those advantages through constantly skirmishing and through constantly fighting. And it's very, very hard to deal with sometimes. And Clem, in his TVZ, in most every game will usually go the same build order. So if we're looking at the production tab, which we have open, you're going to be looking to see, okay, CC after Reaper, so fast expand. And then what usually Clem does is going to be a single gas factory, and he's actually going to go a fast 3rd CC. So Clem, out of all the Terrans, I think does the same opener the most, and it's because it's the build that he feels the most comfortable with and the most confident with. Clem, you know, I think he trusts enough in his ability to scout out what the opponent is doing and to defend if there is early cheese, that usually he can get away with it. And there we go, the 3rd CC is going to go down. Ooh, nice pick on the Zergling. And then usually what Clem does after this is we're going to see actually the 2nd refinery pop down after the starport. I'm like stuttering up a storm apparently as well. But there we go, starport into 2nd refinery, and then this should lead pretty naturally for Clem into Hellion Cloak Banshee. So you're going to see 1 Hellion produced. There we go, the 2nd one as the reactor has been swapped over from the barracks. The tech lab, I believe, is usually built on the barracks. I'm just going to grab confirmation. Yeah. So it builds the tech lab on the barracks, and then we will just see from there the starport be swapped over, get some cloak, get some banshees. Although actually the 2nd gas is very late here. That's a bit out of the ordinary because usually that 2nd gas should be a lot faster, but it does look like Clem isn't actually going to be going cloak banshee. So he's going to, is he Viking into cloak? Huh, okay. So it looks like Clem has workshopped this build a little bit more, because usually what he would do would be 2nd gas and then immediately Banshee production. He did not get the Viking, but actually I think Clem has kind of figured that you can actually go for a Viking first. Why am I saying? I need to stop saying actually. That's a bad habit. But Clem has figured out that you can go a Viking, cloak, and then a Banshee, and you'll actually, and you will have enough gas to do so and get your Banshee out at the same time as cloak, which is interesting. Now, as for Dark, I think just doing Dark things here. 47 workers already, sitting at 3 bases, and is getting up double evolution chambers for those upgrades. And pretty shortly here, I think, should be starting his worker production, as did have to produce 5 overlords. The Viking actually severely supply blocking him. We'll start to see more Ling's production, more workers. Dark gonna go up to 53. Get upwards towards, or get to the get towards 60, and I think that's where we should start to see Dark stop and then get into a higher Ling count. As Stim Pack is on the way, the 2nd Banshee is being produced. The Clem's gonna try and dive on in. I don't think there's really an opening. A good kind of fainted surround with the Zerglings, the Queen's in position. Clem not able to dive on into those mineral lines just yet. And there we go. Dark getting up to 60 workers, 10 more Zerglings to help defend. And the +1/+1 upgrades will be finishing up fairly shortly, alongside the lair and Baneling Nest starting up as the Banshee moves on in, finds 3 drones, moves on out, says that her work is done. And it looks like we're just going to have a completely standard macro game right now, from the looks of it. Nothing out of the ordinary from either of these players, and Clem has finally taken all 4 of the gases on his first 2 bases. A really cool opening. And I say this, of course, with as a Terran player, it's very easy for me to look at the Terran build order and dissect it, but definitely an interesting take on what usually players will do, where this obviously allows Clem a lot more lenience in his mineral production, because he's not using minerals on the additional gas geyser as early. He's not, moving workers onto it as early. So he just is going to have naturally a lot more mineral mining, and can get up his additional barracks a lot faster. Can get up, of course, his engineering bays, and then can, when he needs to, get up his upgrades, go into +1/+1, then you start to add on your additional gas. And I think it's a cool little adaptation, or change on the usual from Clem. It's very, very cool to see. As +2 already started up for Dark. Very, very quick onto those upgrades. And one interesting thing about Dark is that he does have 2 very distinct ways of playing TVZ. Is that he has his Lingbane and he has his Roach Ravager. And with Roach Ravager, Dark tends to be a bit more into the higher, or the lower drone count, just higher army count kind of playstyle. And with Lingbane, does go up to 76 workers, a very, very healthy worker count on 4 bases, soon to be 5. But still, I doubt we're going to see much worker production outside after this. Maybe go up to 80 as we see 6 more being added on, but to kind of make up for the damage that these Banshees have done. But Dark's still just kind of massing up this army. Trying to get as strong as possible to stop these drops, to hold on, and to really just deal with the damage. The Banshee's moving in. Overseer in position. Almost manages to snipe that low health Banshee. But Dark's being kept back in his base. It's really been 2 medevacs and 2 Banshees, and that has been all that Clem has needed to really push, and keep Dark on his side of the map. And Dark, that was 17 Overlords, or 10 Overlords, sorry, at once, not 17, but 10 Overlords at once, which is crazy. And I think like an overproduction even, where Dark is of course trying to spend his money, trying to get towards maxed out here. But Clem has just been able to do whatever he wants at home. There really haven't been any run buys, and is in, I think, a vastly superior position. Even with 2-2 finishing up for the Zerg, you expect it to be a little bit ahead. Usually it's not, I think, as far ahead as it is in this game. But you expect a little bit of a difference as the Banelings rolling on through are finally going to have to settle for the smaller group of Marines, as Clem does split quite nicely. And still applying pressure with the double drop. As soon as the Lingbane comes to clean it up, picks up, gets on out, Clem just not hemorrhaging any units. I mean, I think Clem even still has, the 5, still has the Hellions from before. Have now been turned into Hellbats. As, well, Dark, he's at 5 bases. Says he doesn't want to sit back anymore. He doesn't want to play this game of waiting and defending. He's gathering the swarm here to try and make a move out, and it should work. There's really not a lot at home for Clem to defend, and we're going to get a little bit of a pseudo base race that is just circling, streaming across the map. The 3rd base is going to be cleaned out of Clem's, but at the same time, the 4th goes down. Banshees have been brought back. They are going to help clean up the Banelings, clean up the Zerglings. There's no anti-air in this army for Dark, and Clem, he's just going to keep pushing it, because honestly, Clem can trade pretty decently, and the Banelings actually get some decent connections. still need a little bit more, though. I don't think there's enough damage done to this army for Dark to really comfortably fight it with just the lings that he has. And no banelings especially makes that even harder. As Dark trying to retreat these workers, doesn't want to lose any more. 48 SCVs have gone down, but 34 drones essentially even out the damage. As Dark is shoved back onto 3 bases. Another push coming out from Clem. Should just have to pick up. Far too many Zerglings to try and make anything work with that. Clem pressuring here. The Baneling rolling on in does get focus fired right before it rolls into the army, and actually a lot of Zerglings going down now. I mean, these Hellbats putting in so much work. And Clem's going to continue to rally across the map. Sure, he's on 3 bases as well, but the Terran economy in this position is just so much stronger. You have mules. Clem knows that he doesn't need the scans. There's no creep to clean up. So he's just focusing everything onto the energy for the mules, onto the macro, onto rebuilding. And Dark's trying to put down an Ultra's cover, but I just don't think he's going to have the time. I think Clem really made the right call with that base, kind of that base race. Continued to commit on it and continued to find damage. He knew that he could survive with the Banshees at home and with the units rallying out. And now this is all that Dark has to try and defend. It's 40 army supply. The Banshees are just wreaking absolute havoc. Vipers have been produced. And, they're going to be able to get off that parasitic bomb. That's some pretty good value, but it doesn't actually kill anything. And from Clem, I mean, 3 solid games in a row. I really like this approach to this game. I mean, really just all in onto that economy, onto that macro. Relied on it, and it served him well as the Lings try and get us around, but the Widowmine hits are too good. The army is cleaned up. Clem, just too strong. Picks up, the Banelings are wasted. GG, Clem gonna tie it up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's all kill time, in a sense. This is not going to win the event for Team Europe, but there's a chance that Clem, the player here in the bottom left, can try and take out every single player from Team Europe, put them up 4-3. Get them on the road to victory. As in the top right, looking to stop it. The best Zerg that Korea has ever produced, I would say, is a fair assessment. Of course, you could probably argue that Dark's up there, but I think Rogue edges him out. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. It's Rogue. And Clem, I mean, has been showing some great games. Some great games, and it really hasn't been anything like super spectacular. It has just been Clem having some great defense, great decision making, and recognizing where his advantages are. Kind of almost the Maru style, where Maru will just say, oh, I have this advantage, let's push it. Maru will say, oh, I need to defend, and he'll defend perfectly. I'd say this was, to a lesser extent, what Clem was doing in these last 2 games, where Trap goes for the all-in. It starts to get damaged, but Clem manages his resources well enough, micros his units well enough that he's able to eventually bait Trap into continuing to push, even when Trap needed to transition, and cleaned up the army. And then against Dark, of course, there was they're both moving out on the map. They're both trying to be aggressive. Clem recognizes that, hey, I have my Banshees. I have production at home. My army is just stronger if his is all across the map. His reinforcements cannot deal with what I have, and continues to push it, gets enough damage, and then just has to micro it out at the end. And I mean, there's no better player to micro it out than Clem. And now we're tied 3-3. Of course, for this Invitational, with the all-kill format, with 2 revives, it's essentially a best of 11. So you do need 6 wins to take it all, to take the victory. Which means that even if Clem does beat Rogue, even if he I would call that an all kill. Even if he gets the all kill, does still need to beat one or two of these players again. Still needs to beat them again. And of course, the most daunting, probably, aspect of that is having to face Maru again if he does win this. And even if he doesn't, actually. Even if he gets revived. You know, facing Maru again. Is definitely scary for any of the players on Team Europe. So for Clem, I mean, getting this win here, putting them up 4-3 would be absolutely massive. And I do want to look at the build that he's going here. Because in the last game, which was Clem versus Dark that I casted, which just happened from the same Invitational, I think I made a mistake, because what Clem does is he actually takes the second gas in his natural. And I don't know if there really is a reason to it behind just screen management, and it's faster to just do that, or because he wants to have a Vespene Geyser have just a bit more gas in it as the game goes on in his main. But he actually takes his second gas in the natural. I pointed it out, and then later on I was like, oh my god, Clem went only one gas. And I was really confused by it. And I was like, no, he did have two gas. I was just dumb. Because usually you'll see Terrence build both gases in the main. Clem does build one in the natural. Does usually go for Banshee play. In the last game we saw it was Viking into Banshee. This game we are going to be seeing the Raven come out. And the Raven's a unit that I like to see players use. I kind of wish people used it more in TVZ, because it does actually allow, with your early Hellions, you clean up creep. With your first, double medevac drop of Marines, you can clean up creep and you don't need a scan. And that's actually massive, because that means that you can drop mules for longer. So you don't need to start saving that energy for scans as early as you do without one. And it just means that overall you're going to have a stronger economy if you produce the Raven, as this Overlord should be able to see it, sees the cloak, sees it's canceled, so knows that it's not going to be a cloak Banshee. Clem was trying to bait Rogue into thinking that, which generally would work, as Hellions try and dive on in. Do get a decent amount of Hellion kills, and hey, 3 of them make it out, so altogether not the worst trade. Yeah, Clem trying to bait out that, oh, I'm going Cloak Banshees, because that is kind of his preferred play style in this matchup. Unfortunately, he does have to cancel it. Rogue has all the information. Rogue knows what's going on. We're going to see the +1/+1 started up, so it's going to be Lingbane from our Korean Zerg. Stim and 4 barracks being produced for Clem to get up to the count of 5 that you want to be at. Clem was considering dropping down the auto turret. I think they'll just want to go for it. Probably in the mineral line, although good queen positioning will stop that from happening. This Raven not getting much harassment damage done, which is always scary. Against a player like Rogue, is always scary when you don't get a lot of harassment damage done. And I think the big difference between Rogue and Dark is just how they expand, how they take bases. But now, well, all the queens aren't here, and this is where it can get a bit dangerous for the Zerg. When you don't have your queens in position, it's just Hellions and a Raven pushing on in. The auto turret drops down. Already 2 queens going down. There are a few more transfusions left, but look how much damage these Hellions do. PD charge does actually split up the queens, which is not exactly what you want. Clem not going to commit any further to that fight. And 32 Zerglings on the way for Rogue, going to finally try and get an army that's able to fight against that large Hellions. Great Marine block there on the ramp. But one of the interesting differences about Rogue and Dark is just how they expand and how they kind of handle their macro. And Rogue especially is a player who will just absolutely explode onto the map if you give him space. And so it's good that Clem has started to be aggressive with these Hellions, that he got those queen kills, that he got the Zergling kills, but now, oh, the door's left open! And Rogue is going to make his way into the natural, his way into the 3rd. Medevacs have to be brought back, and the Hellions as well. We try and use to fight. 7 SCVs go down with that Widowmine friendly fire. That is brutal. Clem was actually in a very, very solid economic position. He was sitting 69 workers to 70. Now it's just going to be a little bit further behind than he would probably like, but still, it's a workable position. It could have been so much worse had Clem not pulled his workers as fast, had he not responded by pulling all of his units back to his third bases quickly. Could have been a much worse position for Clem, who's now getting into his 2-2, or the +2 attack at the very least, and there we go, +2 armor to follow. Faster than his Zerg opponent, which is going to be very, very nice. Any, advantage that you have where you're up 2 upgrades is a big advantage. This group of Marines is actually just going to be able to completely clean out that base. Banelings are going to force it back. However, they don't get the kill onto the hatchery as so many Banelings trying to roll on board, but they're slow. They don't have centrifugal hooks. Oh, Rogue. They're not speed Banes. They're just slow waddlers. They haven't gotten any worker kills. There we go. Now they're going to waddle towards the mineral line, but they still only get 4 SCVs. I feel like if that attack had happened now, instead of when it did go in, it could have been so much more deadly with how much Rogue committed to that. I mean, that was so many Banelings and Zerglings committed to that attack, and you don't get significant worker damage. You don't get significant army damage either. Clem just picks up his units because they're slow Banelings. That's actually huge. Rogue invested so much money in that. He invested so much money in it. And if you're looking at it, he's already lost more than double the resources of Clem, who's been extremely efficient at the start of this game. That's just absolutely insane. And now Clem's up 174 supply to 138. Snipes the base. And sure, I mean, Rogue's on 4 bases. But it doesn't matter. That's the crazy part about Terran versus Zerg, is that if you make one misstep like that, where you're committing in so many units, it can just lose you the game. And I'm not going to say that this game is over, but a Terran being up 40 supply at the 9-minute mark, where it's been otherwise, other than that one move, a completely even game, it's going to be a hard comeback to make. Again, it all comes down to not having that centrifugal hooks, to not committing to the mineral line, just trying to get damage onto the army. And now, look just how little there is to fight for Rogue. He's made his way back up to, 70 army supply. But even with that, oh, the Widowmine hits are... He's lost so much. 5K more resources. 10 minutes into this game. And now he's down workers. And now, I mean, all the Zerglings are dead. It's just Hydralisk. I think, yeah, Clem has done it. Just one bad move, and Clem absolutely capitalizes. 3 times in a row, the Zergs try and be aggressive. The green players try and be aggressive. And 3 times in a row, it doesn't work out. You can't disrespect Clem like that. He is just too good in the macro. I mean, he plays against Cyril in TVZ. GG is called. Clem gets Team Europe up 4-3.